Hi, good day. It's Monday and that's time to take a look at the garden. It's our first week of 2008 or 2019 and we're technically, I think I need to shift the weeks because the weeks that we were counting before, we were in the 14th week of our fall garden. So I think, I don't know, maybe we should keep that rolling until the spring garden starts. So if so, that'd be the 15th week of this fall winter garden that we're going to take a look at. And I'm so happy that the sun is out today. It has been so cloudy and dreary here, and we've got a couple of days of sunshine, and then next week it's supposed to be cloudy and dreary. I need to find a sunny box to stay in when it's like that. But things in the garden are looking great. I watched on Instagram so many people here in the valley lost a lot of their plants, mostly things that they were trying to overwinter, like their tomatoes and their peppers and stuff like that. But everything in my garden, I didn't cover anything, and everything did really great, mostly just because I have all cold weather crops out right now. So let's take a look. Our carrots are just getting taller and taller. I got down in here yesterday and I was looking, and down here in the very center, I don't know if you can see, it was starting to look like there were some purple shoulders coming in there, because this is a rainbow blend of carrots. But I'm not so anxious that I'm going to start pulling out anything. I really want it to get as tall as possible, and then we're going to dump the bucket all at one time to see what kind of goodies are in there. And same over here. I'm just going to keep letting this grow. This week for lunch, I'm going to be really diligent about coming out here and getting some more and more lettuce out of here. This beautiful bed is just looking awesome as always. The dill just is getting taller and taller. And today I'm making salad for lunch. I haven't wanted to cut this last week because it was so cold, and I just didn't want to put the lettuces and the greens into any type of sensitive spot with all that they were maintaining in terms of the weather. The strawberry, my husband really wants to grow some strawberries this year. That's one thing he said he wanted to do this year, but I don't think it's going to come from this poor sweet thing right here. Really no change here with the celeries from inside, but like I said, they're there and we're just letting them go. We're going to have miso soup this week, and so I'm going to substitute the collard greens for the kale that it calls for. And we've got lots of little spinach plants coming in here, and I'm super excited about that. They did really well coming out of the frost and stuff there, and there's lots of little bird poo on here if you're wondering what that is. My husband is so sad because he keeps seeing that everybody else has lots of big heads and stuff on their plants, and I have to remind him that we lost all of our plants to the birds eating up the seed. So that put us like 2 or 3 weeks behind, and you know what? We're 2 or 3 weeks behind. And so he's really looking forward to getting into the spring and the tomatoes. Last night, you're going to see here in a minute that we got a bunch of seeds planted yesterday. And he was just kind of like, on planting seeds for broccoli and cauliflower. But I'm really confident because I know that for Arizona, we've got maybe 1 or 2 more weeks of cold weather. Then it's just going to get more consistent with the 70s and creeping back into the 80s, and at that time all these plants are just going to be so happy and growing so fast. So even though he's a little on planting any more cold crops, I still really look forward to what we can get between now and the 1st of March, mid-March, when we start to put everything in for the spring and our early summer. I'm really thinking that I'm about to plant a bunch of more cosmos because I love them. They're beautiful, and once they get going, they're just really pretty showstoppers. And so I've got some blank spaces in here, and I'm still curious to see what's going to come from these flowers. And I'm really impressed with the fact that these all made it through the frost, because the nasturtium didn't do so well. So not a whole lot of huge change over here in the bed, except the wind did a lot of beating on these plants here, but we still got flowering going on, and it looks like from down here we're just not getting enough sun, and everything might be ready for, you know, a feeding with some either compost, top dressing. But think about that, we did that just like right before Christmas. I think we fed everything. So I'll have to go back and check my notes and see if it's time to feed everybody. But I think it's just a lot of battling colder than usual temperatures for Arizona, and it's winter and the sun's in a different spot, so it's a little bit more of a challenge. So let's check out the compost pile and run over to that bed, and then I'm going to take you inside so we can see my seedlings. And I also want to kind of give you a roundup on 2018. The compost pile here, I've got to believe that these are all going to be, that they're the same kind of flowers that are over there. And we got out all the other volunteers, like these things here. They either died out or we pulled most of them out. So this is mostly all flowers. And my plan for this bed in the spring is going to be squashes, all kinds of vining squashes and things like that. And I haven't been that successful with getting squashes to pollinate. So that's why I'm really loading down with a lot of flowers and a lot of inviting pollinating plants. So hopefully the bees will give me some help, because I'm not that good at pollinating, self-pollinating squashes. So come on, bees, come help me out. Now, I will tell you, this weekend, these Bambino carrots are driving me crazy. And so I picked one that was really, had a strong bunch to it. It wasn't really tall, but all the green coming out of the top was really strong and thick. So I pulled it out, and I'll show you a picture of it, like right here. It was really interesting. It was proof that I did not thin them very well, and it almost looked like a person with their leg kind of wrapped around another person. It's a really neat picture of the carrots that I pulled out of there. But the other thing is that Bambinos are supposed to be like that, I thought, and these were just more of a long, elongated carrot. So like I said, you'll have to take a look at the picture, and who knows what's going to happen with these carrots at this point. But here they are, and over here's like the hole where I pulled that out, and you know, that makes me think that this is just a bunch of crazy ones wrapped into each other. And I really felt like I did such a great job of thinning these out, but I must not have. And I got lots of spinach coming up, so maybe one more week and I'm going to take this off of here. This Brussels sprout's doing good, and we don't have anything coming up yet over here from the kale that we not expected, granted, you know, how cold it was last week. And see, here's the sad little nasturtiums. Only a couple of them survived the cold. This is all frost. So I guess I did kind of lose something, and it was, you know, the promise of these really pretty flowers. I'm also compelled to get some more seeds and plant some more of those, because they're gonna look really pretty, and I'd like to have a lot of those around. And I think that my husband's getting a little bit more convinced that flowers are a nice thing to have in the garden, even if you can't eat them. And you can eat a lot of them, even squash flowers. So let's head inside and check out my seeds. Up here on the top shelf are all plants that are destined to go out into the garden pretty quick. These are all like broccoli and cabbage and things like that. Stuff like basil, I'm getting like one ready to go outside, and I want to have like some basil and some dill and cilantro that I'm going to keep inside even through the summer when those plants would start to be bolting. So these are all, like I said, winter plants. And then these are my tomatoes, and there's some tomatoes in here, but it's mostly tomatoes back here on the back row, and then all of this is peppers. Remember my little peat pockets, pucks, things, whatever you call them, all of them molded, and yesterday I was messing with them and I could kind of rub off the mold, but I don't know, the thing that's really helped me most in this gardening experience, besides YouTube and Google, is my gut, just following what my gut says. And my gut just did not like the idea of planting and producing food in something that had just like grown mold. And there's probably somebody else out there that's got better experience. So all I did is I took some of my compost mix, which is a blend of 3 different composts, and I took some of my peat moss and made a ratio between the 3 of those, and that's what I'm using to get my seeds going. And my house is kind of chilly right now. I do not like to run the heat at all. I just don't. The winter time to me is a time to save money on electricity because we run the air conditioning so much in the summer. But we did turn on the heat a little bit to kind of take the edge off, but it's still only about 67. So I've got a little heater. If you hear that sound, it's like a little kind of space heater, and I've got it over here by the shelf just to kind of bring the temperatures up a little bit. I don't want to have to go through putting heating pads. I mean, I know it's going to warm up here in another week or so, so I'm not going to get heavy into a scenario with heating pads and all kinds of stuff like that. This ambient heat right here I think will be enough, and if not, I've got tons more seeds. So now we're going to go sit down and have a little chat about 2018, kind of like the successes, pluses, minuses, things that made me happy, things that didn't, and just a wrap up of 2018 before we get headlong into 19, and 18 is long forgotten. Wanted to catch back up real quick before I closed out for the day and just kind of chat with you about 2018, a basic wrap up. I kind of took some of these ideas from Roots and Refuge. They did a challenge thing where they talked about you know, kind of like their year-end review of their garden, and I'm nowhere near big time like that. But I thought it was a good kind of guideline, and it's something that I kept meaning to do when I first started this channel about 2017. So before I get too far away from myself, I want to chat about 2018. The first thing that Roots and Refuge talked about was what their best crop was. And looking back on it, I would say that anything that we grew this year was probably better and best compared to the year before. But probably the thing that we got the most yield from would definitely be the tomatoes. And our worst crop would be zucchini, kind of the zucchini squash family. The year before, we actually were able to get a couple of squash or zucchini off of the plants, and this year we just really did not have a lot of pollination success. And that was even with, like, you know, keeping a flower for a couple of days in the refrigerator and coming back out. I really, honestly, I'd have to ask my husband, but I don't remember getting a single squash variety type plant from the garden into the house this summer. And I really loved, like I said, how everything did. We made a change with, you know, doubling up the size of that bed to see if a higher bed would give us a better yield, a better success. And we left this one bed over here, but this bed over here, we were just talking about this last night because we had said maybe this year we would double up the size of this bed, but we grew almost 6 foot tall okra plants in that bed. And so it's tough to say whether or not we need to double it up, and I'm probably going to stick to always growing tomatoes in my bucket. So I don't know of anything besides tomatoes and peppers that really want or necessarily have to have that type of depth, especially if the okra, you know, did like it did. And he made another good point, and that's that last year at this time, all of our beds were empty, so it was easy to double up one of the beds and add more soil to it. But the way that we'll kind of come into the spring this time, there'll be too many things going on in this bed over here to be able to facilitate building another level to it. So we're just gonna press on with the way that our beds are, and then So the next thing that they talked about was what would we do different, or what are some lessons that we learned. Something I would definitely do different is I would never transplant my 6 celebrity tomatoes in the middle of summer, but I started freaking out. I can't remember. I think it was something going on with the leaves. And I love my gardening group on Facebook, but I kind of think I should have stuck with leaving them and letting them go along in their 3-gallon buckets, because by the time when I got them transplanted, it took them probably at least 2 to 3 weeks to recover, and in that time they didn't produce really anything. I think that the fruit that they had on there, or the tomatoes that were on there, I think they would have gotten a lot bigger if they had not went through such a shock. So I definitely would make the right choices with my containers going into the season, and I definitely would never do a major transplant like that with such a developed plant that already had set its fruit. One of the other lessons that I would say that I learned, and I just spent a good 10 minutes trying to find this guy's video, but around that time that we were considering doing the transplant, we had a couple of tomatoes come up with blossom end rot, and this guy, like I said, I wish I could remember his name or his channel so that I could thank him, but he had a problem with that on a couple of his plants, and he just went into the garden, I don't want to say cavalier about it, but he wasn't stressed. He was kind of like, well, we're going to do this and we're going to take it off the vine and just not worry about it. And that attitude, adopting that attitude and that mindset that he had, changed everything for both of us as gardeners, because in the first year, anytime anything happened, it was just a huge dilemma. Like, we needed to research it and overthink it and probably overdo whatever the solution was. But after that guy, even as we struggled through the transplant issues with the tomatoes, I just didn't flip out. I just let things keep going their course. I watered them, I fed them, I took care of them in all those regards, and otherwise I think they did a lot better because I wasn't stressing so much, kind of like with children. One of the biggest successes that we had this year is not necessarily something that we ate, it was something that we did, and that was the irrigation system. That by far really transformed our entire gardening experience, and I think it's enabled us to see that we can do a lot more. We can fill these beds up, and because we've got our watering down and we've got our soil mix down and we know how we like to feed our plants, that now we really can do as much as we want back here, and because of that, one of our plans for 2019 is to get an irrigation line set up on this. And last night we were kind of talking about, because over here, like along the side yard, is going to be all filled up, because right about, if you can think about where the bed's at, normally there's 2 pallets coming this way towards the sandbox, and so this year there'll be 2 pallets there, and we're going to run all the way down the side yard, because I think even though I think the wall and the house are going to create a warm area, I think that the shade from the lemon tree, as well as it being easier to put up some shade cloth over there than pretty much anywhere else, that we've got some chances for success over there. So we're going to see a lot more pallets and a lot more buckets this summer. So we were talking about a way of setting up a grid or a pattern where the buckets always sit on the pallet in a certain way, so that we can have kind of a mobile irrigation system, if you will, with the PVC pipes, so that we just be able to go up to each pallet, slide the irrigation in there, hook it up with a hose, let it run, pull it out, and go to the next pallet with us. And for a lot of people that probably would not seem like that feasible, but we're just backyard gardeners back here, a family trying to fumble our way through growing our own food, and for us that that does feel like a feasible thing that we could do, especially since we saw the value and the success of having that measured amount of watering and doing it 2 times a week. And then lastly, I would say something that Roots and Refuge talked about, Jess, as who inspired them this year. And I really found Roots and Refuge through Instagram, and that's crazy. As much gardening as I watch on YouTube, I found them kind of through a back doorway. But the person or the YouTube channel that really inspired me this year, and this is going to seem off base because the big reason why I do this channel and this gardening is to fill a gap in between big time gardeners and just people who are wanting to start out in their backyard or their apartment, in a rental even, you know, not a home that they own already. We wanted to fill a gap in that area so that people could feel comfortable fumbling and learning from us just like we are. So as crazy as that sounds, the person that really inspired me and kept me pumped about gardening all year long was Curtis Stone. And that's maybe because all of the first part of last year, I dreamed about being a market gardener. And, you know, so I watched a lot of those videos, and that's something that kept me inspired to stay and focused on my garden. That and listening to Diego's podcast. And those are all much bigger, and I don't even know if I still want to be a market farmer. But those things are what kept me excited and pumped about gardening, and listening to all the different farmers on Diego's podcast. That's where I got the whole inspiration for going big and strong with my okra plants, was from somebody there. That's basically who's inspired me this year, and I hope I inspire you some. But above all, I want to thank you so much for checking in with us every week, and I hope you have the best day ever, and I'm looking forward to showing you some seedlings next week.